Welcome to Dustin's Grillaways. This month in June, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Scorch. This is actually an electric broiler that's made by a company called Flame King. So we went ahead and ordered this right off of Amazon. This is the box that it came in. It looks like it doesn't have any special packaging or letters that can actually be left on your front porch, probably no problem. So let's go ahead and unbox this and see what's inside. Now that we have this Flame King unboxed, the Scorch actually only comes with a few components. We have a drip pan here for the bottom. We have a grate that allows what I'm hoping is going to be some really cool sear lines on there. This is actually really thick, surprisingly thick. Where the drip pan seemed kind of lightweight, but now that I kind of play with it, it actually is a pretty nice steel here. And then they have a handle that they've included. This allows you to actually lock in and slide these pans in and out. We'll actually test this when we cook to see how easy it is inside. Seems kind of sturdy. I don't know if I would lock. As long as you got some weight on there, I think you're going to be okay. Inside of here, there's actually 9 different slots. So what we see is we have different levels of closeness that we can get to the broiler. Inside here, it actually is very easy to slide in. See if I can do one that doesn't fit diagonal. It'll let you go diagonal. You don't want to do that, but so you just have to be careful sliding inside in. On the actual drip pan here, which probably doubles as just a broiler pan, you can slide it in. It's going to catch everything. You're definitely going to want to make sure that that's actually in each time you use it, so you can keep this machine nice and clean. All right, so let's go ahead and fire this up and get it ready for cooking. So after you push the power button on the back, what you're going to do is go ahead and look at these settings here. In order to, the knob actually doesn't have like a 0 to 10. It just kind of keeps going in a circle over and over and over again. So it's kind of funny. They put low temperature, more is more, and then hotter than hell as you keep going to the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and press it once, and it's going to turn everything on. Now we're going to go ahead and cook our steaks at probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 degrees here. And so we're gonna just keep turning this knob till it goes up. And then you're gonna go ahead and go to time. And when you go to time, that's how long it's gonna take to actually heat up to that temperature there. If you wanna go ahead and change the temperature, you can just push it again, and this is off and back on. And we can just take this temperature back up. 2 minutes and 30 seconds it's actually gonna take to heat up to get to that temperature. And so it's actually relatively quick. When I look at and feel like how much heat's coming out, and there's no heat. There's no heat on the bottom at all. If I look at the top, I can feel the fan blowing and trying to kind of keep this unit cool so it can sit on the countertop. And overall, I mean, it is already up there in terms of degrees. So we're actually looking pretty good. Now this time is actually the timer for how long that you want this thing to turn on for. I actually made a mistake earlier. I actually thought it was how much time it took for it to heat up. What I understand is that when it brings the temperature, it's actually going to oscillate by about 20 degrees up and down. It's not going to stay perfect. And so the broiler up top is heat. Like I can feel the heat just coming out of the front of this thing. This is actually a countdown timer. And after this amount of time, it's actually going to turn the unit off. So let's go ahead and prepare some steaks. Let's get them ready. We'll go ahead and throw them and see how this thing broils. All right, so now that we got our steaks prepped, let's go ahead and see how well this works. So let's go ahead and turn it on. I'm gonna go ahead and select 700 degrees. We're gonna go ahead and put this on for 3 minutes and 30. Let's go ahead and put our steak on this grill. Let's go ahead and slide it in. They tell you to get it as close to the broiler as you can here. So what we see here is that we have our temp set, and this is automatically bringing it up. So we set this just around 700 degrees for 3.5 minutes. You can see here that the timer is not going to start until it actually gets up to temperature, which is actually a really nice feature of this machine here. The timer itself is actually a safety feature, so that if you leave this on, this broiler is only going to go on for the set time that you have it, which I really like, because a lot of times when I might walk away and actually leave something on a little bit longer than it should, and when you're broiling something and it's getting hot, especially in your oven at home, when you're in your oven and you put the broiler on, you're typically going to get a lot of smoke. So this says smokeless. I am really interested to see exactly how smokeless this is actually going to be. One of the important things that we want to make sure that we're doing is make sure that your meat's at room temperature. If you try to put a cold steak in here and try to get the outside nice and broiled, what you're going to do is you're going to get a really good sear on the outside, and you're going to have really kind of pink undercooked on the inside. In order to avoid that, make sure you're leaving your steak out for 20 to 30 minutes, and depending on what temperature it was at before, but you want to get it to room temperature before you actually start your cooking process. All right, looks like we have about 10 seconds. We're going to then pull this out and see what kind of broil, what kind of sear that we're actually getting on the steak. It should look really good, and it looks like we're going to shut off here in 1 minute. So make sure you use your handle. You're going to reach in, grab that, and pull this grate out. And what we're going to see is no cooking at all, guys. So the first time we did this, we actually read the manual. And when we put the manual in, it actually said to cook this around 800 for this particular T-bone. We did cook it, and it did nothing. I mean, there was no broil on there. There was no sizzle. We were actually having a hard time just seeing if there was something going on. Now, they advertise that this goes up to 1500 degrees. And so what we've done is we've gone ahead and maxed it up. We got 1500 degrees going, and so we're expecting to get one hell of a sear on this steak. Once again, just kind of talking through the safety features here. This thing is heating up. We're almost at 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So, you know, one of the things that when you're cooking is really what's the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit. Make sure you know where you're cooking and what temperatures individuals are saying. Now that we're getting up, the temperature on this steak's going to climb. We're going to climb up to about 1500 degrees, and then this timer is going to go ahead and kick off and then count down our 3.5 minutes. So the instructions on this actually tell you to slide that up to as close as you can to the broiler, leaving as little space as possible without actually touching it. So what we've done is we actually had it what I thought would be the top, but I pulled it up one more rung. We have about 1/8, maybe 1/4 of an inch between the steak itself and actual broil element. So again, this is our first time cooking with this, so this is exactly what you're gonna go through at home, is like, where do I put it? You might think it might be fine down. You know, when we're at the oven, when we're using an oven, we're kind of putting our stuff in the middle. You know, we're not bringing it too close to the top, and we're usually getting a really hot sear, a really good char, whatever it is that we're cooking at home. For this Scorch, it really does appear that it needs to be as close to that broiler as possible. So we've actually gotten to temperature. We're around 1400, and our timer has started to count down. So one of the things that they actually talk about with this particular grill is that it is smokeless. Now, I did not believe that anything could be smokeless. I think what they meant by that is that if you just turn it on, it's just not gonna smoke. But you can see here that we do have some nice little bit of smoke coming, which is actually a great sign, because when we first tried this, we weren't getting anything. We actually weren't getting a cook, because at 800 degrees, it was not even remotely touching a sear on this particular steak. So it's really good to see this actually changing out. If I lean in close, I can actually hear the sizzle of the steak at this point. So the steak is actually searing on the top. I can hear it. And if I was just going by sound, I would actually say it sounds delicious. So this has actually been cooking for about 2 minutes now. And one of the things I can start seeing is, one, I've seen some small pops of flame. I'm also seeing some drippings kind of starting to come down into that pan. And so what that means is, like, some of that fat is starting to sear, starting to render, starting to soften up. That's actually a good sign for this thing cooking and looking great. So we have about 1 minute left. Then we're gonna go ahead and pull it out and give it a flip. All right, we got about 3 seconds left. All right, so this is super hot. It's gonna automatically start cooling down the moment that the timer goes off. We'll go ahead and take our handle, and let's pull this steak out and see how it looks here. Wow, look at that. So we actually learned something here. So on this particular, we can see where it's seared really nice, and it just didn't touch the steak at all on the front here. So what that's telling us is that there's a heating element, and that heating element actually doesn't start until this point right there. So I'm not gonna touch this steak because it's probably gonna be really, really hot. But what we're gonna do is move the whole thing kind of towards the back here so that we can get it all underneath the heating element. We'll probably have to go back and reheat that other side. So let's go ahead and throw this in and sear the other side. We'll get our temp to 1400, and we're gonna be at 3 minutes, 30 seconds, and now we're gonna cook again. Typically what we would end up doing is we would sear this in a pan or cook for so many minutes, and then we'd go ahead and pull it off and let it rest. We're gonna do that and see how the inside of this steak actually looks. So when I seared the backside of this, I went ahead and lowered it down. Like it did tell us, depending on the thickness of the meat, that you want to get it nice and close, but if it's too close and it's too thin of a meat, it's going to cook straight through. So you want a quick sear, you want it hot and fast, and so we have this about as hot as it's going to go in this particular case. And we are doing for 3 minutes, so we're gonna actually see what kind of cook that gives us. All right, this steak's been cooking for about 2 minutes now. You can see it's nice and red up there. We can see, you know, everything just broiling. We can see it popping and just searing on the top. It actually looks delicious. It's one of the fun things about grilling is kind of the enjoyment of seeing the sear and being part of the process and seeing that. When you have this scorch and this broiler here, I would say some of the fun is actually removed from there. Like the grill itself, I'm hoping it's gonna taste delicious, and it's doing a great job. I can kind of set and forget. The smoke level is very, very small. This is actually probably half as much as when we do in a cast iron at home and we have it right on the stovetop. So if this was in my kitchen, I was cooking my steak this way, I actually would not feel bad at all. It would be doing a great job. You know, you are limited to sides. You know, I can only do 1 T-bone at a time here. So if you have a party of 2, I mean, just 2 people, you're gonna have to be waiting to get this thing out. Now we do have some smaller steaks. We'll try those side by side, see how they look and how they actually perform. We got about 30 seconds on the second half of our cook. Things are looking really good. The smoke level's not bad at all. We're seeing it, this steak is looking really good from what I can see. I'm really looking forward to pulling it out and seeing how much it affected it by us turning the steak and actually trying to get it more under the broil element itself. We just finished our 3.5 minutes on the second side. Let's go ahead and pull this out and see how it looks. It's actually looking pretty good. You know, I can definitely tell a difference. You know, when we had it a little bit higher on the other side, I noticed that it was more full. And here, right in the center, we have a really great char. And then as we get to the outside edges, I can just tell that this is probably pretty raw. It is super hot, so it's definitely cooking. I'm actually gonna throw it in for 1 more minute at that top level and just see if we can get a full sear on this backside. All right, we got about 10 seconds left on this cook where we went ahead and tried to sear that second side just a little bit better. And let's see exactly how well this is gonna look for us. All right, so our timer went on. We're gonna shut it off. I love this handle. By the way, this handle looks really good. And you know what? There's just not much change. You know, all the ends and the round pieces just did not get charred or seared like I'd like to see. Let's go ahead and pull this off and cut into it. All right, so what we're gonna do is let's go ahead and just cut this right from the bone real quick and see exactly what we got. And I'm gonna cut it right from there. So what we have is actually very, very light pink here. Not light pink, a dark pink. We've definitely overcooked this steak. I would have liked to have seen it a little bit more pink on the inside. I will tell you that the crust, you know, if I'm looking at the crust on the outside, it actually, on the sides, it actually didn't do that bad of a job. There's a little bit of crust there. Let's go ahead and see how this tastes. It actually is very juicy. Definitely overcooked. Let's flip this around. We're going to try the other side. We can see that, yeah, then again, this is just a little bit on the overcooked side. Now we did throw it in for 1 more minute. It does tell you, like if you want a good sear, get nice and close. But if you get it close, it's gonna tend to overcook it. It's just not hot enough, at least on this T-bone here. All right, so we went ahead and experimented with our T-bone. Now let's go ahead and try a ribeye. This is about a 12-ounce ribeye. We already have it seasoned, ready to go. What we're gonna do, what we learned from the first cook, is that we're gonna put it, try to get it as in the middle as possible so that the majority of this is underneath the broiler itself. So I have that position. What I'm also gonna do is I'm gonna try to max the temperature out and get the as high as I can, and I'm gonna lower it down so we can get a sear, but not cook the middle. All right, so this go around, I've gone ahead and I've lowered the steak just a little bit. Now we have a really good, about an inch between the broiler and the steak itself. I've cranked the temperature as high as it'll go. It let me get up to about 1600. So before it started just not moving the dial anymore. And then I've also increased my time to 4 minutes. So we had 3.5 minutes before, but I think it could have used that extra time for sear. So let's go ahead and see how this does and see if we can't get a more perfect sear on this steak. All right, so this extra temperature that we had and everything just definitely made a huge difference on the sear here. We got fire coming in, and we're definitely like if we were actually on the grill. You could see that I'm pulling it out a little bit early, probably about, so we left it in for about 3 minutes, 45 seconds. And you can see here, you know, we got quite a couple of flames going, which is really nice. I was a little bit worried that this is actually gonna cook through too much. And so I'm gonna go ahead and flip it over. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and drop it down just one more rung. We're gonna hit this up high. And we're gonna sear for 2 minutes just on the back side. That 2 minutes is because I'm a little bit worried that it might have cooked through too much. And just like all of our videos, this is the first time that we're using this equipment. So we don't really know how well it's gonna work, and we're kind of experimenting with size and temperature. We do a little bit of research, we read the manual. Based off the manual the first time, we did not get this exactly where it needed to be. It did not perform according to what it said temperature-wise. Here, we've cranked up the heat just to see, you know, if scorch actually means scorch. And I will tell you that once we jacked up the temperature to 1600, we've definitely seen a difference. We're actually getting fire and flames, we're getting grease dropping down, so we're definitely having a much better cook. What I also noticed when it was cooking this last time was just the amount of smoke that was coming out of here. This broiler would be just equivalent with your oven, and just the amount of smoke that would come out of it. It's not that bad here, and it's exactly what I would expect from a cast iron. So it's at the level that I would expect, but I certainly wouldn't call this smokeless. So our cook started, we got about 1:45. We're gonna sear this top side, maybe try to bring it a little bit closer. For just a shorter amount of time and see how well we do it. I will tell you, this handle is actually really nice. It's very thick, it's very sturdy. Grabbing each of these trays and pulling them in and out has been a breeze. So definitely think as far as the sturdiness of this entire unit, I would say it's spot on. I'm pretty impressed with just the quality of the actual device. It actually doesn't look that bad either. If I was gonna put this on our kitchen counter, it would probably last for a day or two before my wife would say it needs to go underneath the counter. But you know, we don't leave you know, toasters and other cooking equipment on the counter. So if we have the Instapot out, that Instapot is sitting out there for the time of use. We clean it, we put away. If this is a little bit bigger and heavier, so if this was on the counter, I might be there for a day or two. I'd clean it, and then I would go ahead and put it under the drawer. But I wouldn't be embarrassed to have this unit sitting on the counter if I had company over. We've got about 15 seconds left on this cook. So I did raise this up to the highest rung. So I got about that 1/8 inch, like where we had it the very first time when we did the other steak. Just want to see what it's going to do at a shorter time. So we did it for 2 minutes at a much higher temperature and see what that's like. So once again, it's going to beep, it's shut off, it's completed. I'm going to reach my handle in and slide this out. And actually, it's looking pretty good. I have to say that this actually is a much nicer, obviously we're getting used to it. We can see this steak. I think that on the backside, we could have let this sear a little bit more. It's not as crusty as like what you would get in a cast iron or somewhere where you have a more flat surface. It's really just kind of broiling it. Let's go ahead and see what it looks like on the inside. Nice, thick, juicy steak. And you know what? We have a thin pink line in the middle. I definitely think it was the right thing to do to not cook this for that full 4 minutes. I definitely think we could have cooked the first side exactly how we did the back side, and we would have got to that perfect outer crust and then middle steak. Let's go ahead and see how this tastes. I almost take back what I said about the crust. That first side that we did it longer, further away from the element, and I can tell the one side that's definitely more crusty and actually really tasty. If we look at the meat here, this is the first side we did. It's nice and dark, and it's solid. It is very solid. If we look at the second side, which we did shorter and closer, not nearly as much sear. Definitely softer, some pink in the middle, and really, really just tasty. Thanks for watching our June Grillaways. This month we reviewed the Scorch by Flame King. You know, we had a good cook. I mean, it was the first time that we used this machine, and we overcooked both times, but we learned, I think, maybe 1 or 2 more steaks, and we would probably dial this thing right in as far as temperature, time, the actual distance that we need to bring it in. When we did the second steak, we had one side that was just beautifully seared overall. The second side we did closer and higher heat, shorter time, and it just did not sear it the way we would like. But when we tried it, it was actually like having one side that was just delicious, and the whole thing kind of melted in our mouth. Definitely on probably the medium, very lightly medium rare side. It was just quite, almost perfect. So go ahead and smash that subscribe button if you'd like to see us review more grills. Tell us what grills you'd like to see. Make sure you go to Grillaways.com. Go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter. You're gonna be in the running to receive this for the month of June, and then you'll be automatically, for every additional month that you're subscribed to the newsletter, you'll automatically be enrolled inside of our contest to give away a grill. Thanks for watching, and see you next month.